Hey guys, it's Dave on January 5th. How are we all doing with our resolutions so far? I I did not come up with any firm resolutions for the year, and maybe that moment has passed. I don't know. But I am resolved to do a kind of fun, chill, chatty video. Chill because it's like 5 degrees in Iowa. Might have warmed up a little bit. But I don't have wish lists per se, and I didn't want to do favorites of 2024 because there are a lot of those videos. But there are a group of plants that I am most excited about growing through this year. And those are the ones I'm going to talk about. If that sounds cool, stick with me. First up is kind of cheating. It's just the entire family of orchids. And this is just a lovely mini phal that I got from Orchids by Hasserman. I did the unboxing on, it was early November, like November 2nd, I believe, as if that's terribly important. But it was in bloom when I unboxed it, and I believe it had 3 blooms on it, and then all of these buds. It now has 2, 4, 6, 7, and a half open right now. There are 10 more buds to open on this. So this particular one is going to be with me for quite a while, and it also has that really interesting and pretty foliage. I know that quite a number of people, I don't say complain, but complain that orchids are not the most, don't have the most attractive foliage, and if it's not in bloom, you're just looking at, really plain leaves. I would say for orchids like this that stay in bloom for so long, or the garden variety, Lowe's, Home Depot, larger Phalaenopsis that can stay in bloom for months and months and months, pretty small price to pay. And I have a lot of Hoya that I grow with very plain leaves because they have such beautiful blooms. So not a big deal for me. Looking forward to growing a nice variety of these and having blooming orchids year-round in my house here in Iowa City. So first up, orchids in general. I did have 2 planty resolutions. I did not want to carry in a couple of things to 2025. One were some repots and retrellising I wanted to do. That didn't happen. The other one was to chop down my last moss pole. And I was going to do that on camera, but when I was watering it, it fell, it crashed into a plant. I had just done a thorough cleaning of my living room, re-oiled our natural heart pine yellow floors. Look, I lost my temper. And for me, losing my temper with plants was like, okay, I'm doing it right now. It's about as bad as it gets. So 50% success rate, not bad. And this is what remains of the plants on my moss pole. I'm sorry, this is one pot of what remains from that moss pole. And I'll put the full name, it's a mouthful, I'll put the full name on the screen, but this is my Kujang's Flame. And it is an absolutely gorgeous plant. But do I feel like it will grow just as well being supported by a cane? I most certainly do. I was very tired of trying to keep up with the watering of a moss pole with forced furnace heat in Iowa. I had to water it every 2 days. It was wrapped around in some ways with the stem, so even if I wanted to put a plastic back on it, it was too late. But the last thing on earth I want to look at in our beautiful old home is a 6-foot tall piece of plastic while the most beautiful part of the plant is facing the window. So I'm going to do a 6-foot vertical Barina lighting system with this. Grow it up on cane. It is going to be just fine. No, every node is not going to have its own root system. For me, a small price to pay. I haven't been happier with the plant chore in at least 2.5 years when I started getting rid of all the philodendron that I had been influenced to buy. So Kujang's Flame. Cheers. I think everybody watching this either knows that I'm a sober alcoholic or can deduce that from the fact that I've called this channel Sober Plant Guy, indicating that I wasn't always the sober plant guy. You know, I never had the resolution to quit drinking on January 1st because I simply was incapable of doing it, but I did have the hope that things would get better. Like this year, you know, I hope that things will get better with long COVID. It's not something I can sort of actively make happen. And I will see for January, a lot of people come around the sobriety program I'm involved with, you know, kicking the tires. It's a goal for a number of people to reduce their drinking or quit altogether in January. And there's going to be a percentage of people who are going to be even astonished to find they can't do it. And I feel so blessed that I had a miracle moment and I sought help and took their advice. And so anything else that happens after January 1st, it's just like icing on the cake, you know? I mean, I've been sober for years now, and gosh, what a life. Anyway, back to plants. You may have seen an unboxing I did of my Begonia Black Magic, and it was not, it looked okay. Right now it's not getting enough light to be black, but it's got those blood red backs on it. It had grown out to about a foot tall, maybe, something like that. But it must have grown on its side, so it was like the leaves were upside down and backwards, and I put it in front of a bright window with an overhead powerful light, and it was so cork twisted around, it didn't do anything. And I didn't name the nursery because I've done plenty of business with them. It's family. It's Gabrielle's out of Florida. You know, I just had never had a problem with them, and I wasn't worried about it. I just started the plant over, and they reached out to ask me how the purchase went. I mean, not me specifically. I'm sure it was a generic email. And I responded back like, hey, no big deal, but you know, there's this one little problem, but I just chopped the plant up, and I'm not worried about it. And no questions asked. They refunded half the money, which I didn't ask for anything. I came to buy this plant when I was trying to convince myself to buy an anthurium, just to have it, just to grow it. And I was like, what am I doing? I don't want to grow anthurium. I have 2, that's enough anthurium for me. And I saw this. They're so inexpensive. It doesn't get huge like some of the cane begonia. So I think a foot or a foot and a half is its full height. I think I'm right about that. They do get extremely dark foliage, and then of course these blood red backs, and then it'll be a nice little bloomer when that happens. So these are looking great. I took a whole bunch of cuttings, and this is them. They have all rooted. Yeah, it's a humble plant, but it's very near the top of the list, probably after orchids, that I'm excited about growing this year. On the one hand, my Hoya verstegi is one that I'm just happy is alive. I got this from my friend Kim at Crazy Plant Gal, and I'm keeping this in quite high humidity, and oftentimes I will put a plastic sleeve over a terracotta to keep the pot moist, and well, that's what happens. It's a little bit messy, but it's an effective way to keep the pot from drying out too quickly. But anyway, back to where I got this. I had helped out at my friend's nursery. She has over 600 unique varieties of Hoya, and she gifted me quite a few, and this is one of them, with these wonderful wavy edges, pubescent leaves, and I had a starter plant. So it had 1 node and 2 leaves, and it was looking decent. It put off some new growth, but those leaves began to turn yellow. And once they began to turn yellow, I mean, they went yellow, bright yellow, and fell off. And it took like no time at all, days, that happened. So thus, nothing down here. But it did put out, this is a slick pot. It did put out this little mini leaf here. And then you can see it's been sizing up quite nicely. And again, I love the pubescent leaves. Oh, grosses my wife out when she hears me say pubescent leaves, even when these leaves are as pubescent leaves could be. Possibly the most pubescently pubescent leaves of any Hoya I have. It has that vine putting new leaves on right now, and there is another one right there. So I am thrilled with this one. It is such a beautiful plant, and it will feature prominently in my living room this spring. This would be a terrible time to try to transition a plant from a very humid grow tent into a living environment where the furnace is currently running 24 hours a day, I am sure. So we'll leave it in the grow tent for now, but really happy about this one. Really excited to get this one going into a big plant. This next plant is responsible for starting a really lovely friendship here in Iowa. And, you know, I want to say something about our plant community. You know, I'm excited about joining the Eastern Iowa Orchid Society because I think I'm going to learn a lot. There are going to be a lot of people who grow orchids in my environment, and it's just going to be a blast. I am sure of it. They meet on the first Thursday of the month, take January off. So on December 5th, I was going to go to my first meeting. I was horribly ill. I'm finally starting to sound like I used to, 6 weeks ago. And I sent an email and said, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be there, because it was their potluck dinner. They were giving away orchids in bloom, so they wanted to make sure they had enough. I just felt terrible. I'd felt weird about showing up, the first meeting being like, hey, feed me and give me a plan, in the first place, and then to have to bail. And no one responded to that email, and I just noticed on Messenger, which I don't check ever, that they had asked if there was anything they could do for me. Haven't even met me. Are you kidding me? I just had my biggest hit on YouTube, the last video on rare plants, rest in peace. Almost 10,000 views right now, which means it's being pushed to people who have never seen any of my videos before. No one has flamed me. Like, I would expect negative comments when I'm kind of dissing rare plants. And you know how people are. Elitism, people want to feel like what they have is really special, and then somebody they've never heard of before comes on and says, ain't that special? Kind of, which is my attitude towards everything. I despise elitism, classical music elitism, literature, arts in general, and plants. It's ridiculous. No patience for it at all. So, at any rate, I got an email from a viewer and asked me if I would be interested in a trade. And I've told this story before, and I wasn't really. I had lost my career due to long COVID, and I was selling plants because I needed the additional income. And so I was lukewarm to the idea. And then she sent me some pictures of her plants, and holy cow, what a Hoya grower. And many, many other types of plants, but just absolutely gorgeous. There were several I was interested in, and one of them was the Hypoplasia. It is another beautifully pubescent plant. These lance-like leaves, I just can't get enough of this. The thing about this plant, if you don't have one and you do end up getting one, and highest recommendation, not a difficult plant, at least for me to grow, is that the new leaves come in yellow, and then the chlorophyll starts taking over, and they just look like they're dying. That looks like an unhealthy leaf, right? Well, it's just a new leaf. And the healthy one, like this, just absolutely gorgeous. I love this plant. I can't remember what the flower looks like, and I don't want to look it up. It's one of those things, I want to be surprised. Well, maybe we're looking at this year, because I don't know, but probably not. But it is one that has grown so fast for me. Apparently mine is now larger than the one she took this cutting from. So I've had very, very good luck with it. No hiccups at all. It came in a little 2-inch clear dollar store pot, which probably saved this. If you have seen my video on the death pots, the plastic pots with the silicone bottom on them, many of her plants went into those when I got them rooted, and they all either, one, croaked if they were really young or had to be started over, except the ones that came rooted or just didn't end up in those pots. So my favorite plant out of the trades, and I think I traded like 4 plants and got 18. That's a pretty balanced trade. I wish they'd all go that way, in my favor. And it's still my favorite out of all of them, and it's the one that is doing the best. So boy, what a win for 2024, the Hypoplasia. When I was up at my friend Kim's house, Crazy Plant Gal, I think I might have been there as a customer. I don't really remember. But there is a plant that caught my eye. I've seen it on YouTube. Haven't been moved to buy one. And like a lot of plants, you see them on the screen, see them on your little phone. They look good, but you know, they're fine. Then you see it in person, it's like, oh boy. And for me, that was the Philodendron Florida Beauty. Just, whoo. I mean, this plant, right? It's absolutely gorgeous. So it was just a cutting. It was not rooted, so it had one node and it had this really beautiful leaf here. And then I put it in a plastic cup and perlite, and it put out these little leaves, and it looks like they come in quite mint, and then the variegation comes in after. Couldn't swear to that, but this didn't used to be variegated at all. Now, I waited way too long to get this into my normal substrate because it had the cup had a sheen of green on it, and I really didn't see any roots like I was expecting to. It was in there firmly, so I knew it was rooted, and it was alive and growing well, but I was expecting to see some beefier roots kind of poke around, and so finally the other day I decided to pot it up, and that green mass was a mass of matted roots, and much finer than I am used to seeing on a philodendron. So I was looking at roots, I just didn't know it. And then with the algae, it kind of, I guess, masked it a little bit. But this is really elegant, and you know, variegation in a philodendron is very unstable. So I think even if, now obviously these came out very juvenile after the cut, but even if this went green or had very light variegation, this was not an expensive plant. I actually spent my own money on this one for a change there. And I would still be happy with it. I think it'll look really elegant growing up a cane. Obviously it's not going on a moss pole. And I'm looking forward to growing this one and just having something really simple, but some architecture to the leaf. And now we go all the way humble with a goldfish plant. I have never had this plant hanging until just the other day. A friend in Arizona gave me this beautiful yarn hanger. This one has a stone in it, another one has some shale, but I'm doing a terrible job of showing this. It really hasn't, it's been sitting kind of on a box, so it was a little bit elevated, but it was behind another plant. So it was getting the light it needed, but I wasn't able to enjoy it as much as I am now anyway. And now that it's hanging and it's just, you know, doing its freak flag flying thing, I am enjoying it so much. It has so much new growth on it. Obviously it's blooming. It is just fun to have a plant like this. I featured it in my Stop Recommending Boring Plants video. It's just a great plant, and I spent, I think then you could get a little snippet of a plant for $250 or $225, and I think they're up to $350. So along with the price of eggs, everything is more expensive now. But I did nothing special except initially I made a few chops on one vine, stuck it right back into the dirt, and then I never did it again. All of this growth is just it doing its thing. And so, I don't know, this might not make cover magazine of Wish List Plant 2025, but I'm sure excited about it. Okay, we have to draw the line somewhere on how many plants I'm excited to grow this year. When I was putting back that plant, I saw 3 other top contenders. One is just about to bloom, a Hoya that has an absolutely magnificent, massive flower. So I will be saving that one. I don't want to breathe on it right now. I just want to make sure that it's getting the light it needs and I don't underwater it, and then I'll feature that hopefully soon. It is taking a very long time to come along. So anyway, enough about a plant that you're not even going to see today. Let's take a look at the onychoides. This is another one of those deep green leaved, super lance leaves. I can't get enough of this look. I love green plants in general, and I love deep green plants even more. This is one that my friend Kim, Crazy Plant Gal, practically forced me to take. I thought she'd already been quite generous in the number of plants she gave me for a day's work, and this is one that she just basically insisted that I take. And it's another one that has mega flowers on it. So we're not going to see this one bloom this year for sure, but I can't wait to get this going larger. I'm going to put this is living in normal household conditions, and my humidity without multiple humidifiers going can drop very, very low, which really, and by very low I mean in the teens. That can really hinder the growth of Hoya, and it can just kill off new vines, those new growth points. So I've never had an experience ever once where I moved a plant from even kind of decent-ish humidity into the tent where it is contained and very high humidity, where the plant didn't take off. Or, I mean, not like a rocket always, but sometimes yes. Sometimes the growth is very fast, but they always do better over the winter in that contained humidity. It will also give even illumination all around this plant, although this has been on my new plant shelf, so it's getting really good light right now. But onychoides, one that I can't wait to make into a bigger plant. Man, what a gorgeous girl she is. You know I love comments. What are you most excited about this year? Do you have some big disappointments? Because I feel like I want to do that video after, well, I won't mention it right now in case I end up doing that video. But let me know how your 2024 stacked up for you and what you plan for 2025. Look forward to seeing those comments. Then come see me again in the next one real soon, okay? Bye-bye.